He spoke her name, and the alien woman's reaction changed everything. Ilia's Ren had only meant to steal some parts, maybe a data note, or two certainly. Not the eye of an alien woman who looked like she could bend star steel with her fingers, and had the ears of a particularly annoyed elf, but here he was on the burnt orange sands of Histara 9. Halfway through digging a heat-skirt panel out of an ancient observatory's wall, when she appeared without a sound, a silhouette against the shimmer of the twin suns, pointing what he could only describe as a weapon-shaped accusation. Directly at his chest, step away from that panel, she said. He froze, not out of fear, well, not entirely, but because she spoke standard like a diplomat and looked like someone who hadn't seen a good meal or a decent joke in 100 years. The cloak she wore was patched with the markings of dead civilizations. Her boots made no imprint in the sand. Nice entrance, he said, keeping his hands raised. Let me guess, you're the local historical society. Her eyes narrowed. Golden, not metaphorically golden, not poetic golden, literally gold. Irises flecks of something moving behind them like solar flares. Her ears, long and arched back, twitched once. You don't belong here, she said. Well, that's been the story of my life, but usually people just mutter it behind my back. She didn't smile. She didn't even blink. Instead, she stepped forward. He noticed now that her left hand hovered near a secondary weapon, holstered at her hip, and that her right bore a small emblem, something ancient, a lyre etched with symbols that pulsed softly as she approached. He should have been afraid, but he wasn't, not really, and that was weird. There was a pull in his chest, not a literal one, not some cliché magnetic force field or quantum bond. Just a knowing, like a half-remembered melody playing behind his thoughts. She stopped 3 paces away. Your name, speak it mine. Ilia's Rain, professional scavenger, occasional disappointment. She tilted her head slightly. And he said, then paused, not sure why, but the name came to him not from memory, not from a file. It just surfaced, ancient and soft. Sala. The effect was immediate. Her weapon dropped, almost slipped from her fingers. Her pupils contracted, breath halting like a program crashing mid-run. The air around them seemed to freeze, the sand holding its breath. No one knows that name, she whispered. Pretty sure I do, he said. She stepped back. Number no one. Well, technically, now it's one, he said, holding up a finger. So you might need to update your security protocols. Sarala didn't laugh. She did, however, lunge forward, activating some kind of containment cuff. With a flick of her wrist, a shimmer of blue wrapped around Ilia's chest and shoulders, pulling his arms to his sides like a metallic straitjacket. All right, we're doing the whole kidnapping thing. She ignored him. She turned, gestured sharply, and a section of the cliffside flickered, revealing a camouflaged hatch embedded into the rock. With a reluctant hiss, the door opened, releasing stale, recycled air. This is starting to feel personal, Ilias muttered as she half-dragged, half-levitated him through the doorway. Inside was a winding corridor lit by green strips that flickered occasionally, as if waking from a long slumber. The air was heavy with disuse and something else, ozone maybe, or the scent of machines older than history. Ilias glanced around. Let me guess, you live here alone, no pets? Maybe a talking toaster? Be silent, strong, silent type. Got it. Still, I feel like if someone says your name and nearly gives you a heart attack, maybe you talk it out, or at least I don't know. Offer tea. She turned for a moment. Something passed over her face, not anger, not fear, a mixture of disbelief and regret. This facility is off limits. Protected. Is that why it tried to fry me when I stepped into it? You weren't supposed to be able to enter at all. Well, he said, flashing a smirk. Despite being wrapped up like a burrito, I've always had a knack for going where I don't belong. That earned a slight pause from her. No smile, but the barest twitch of an eyebrow. The corridor opened into a vast chamber where strange consoles pulsed with pale blue light. Crystalline structures rose from the floor like petrified lightning. In the center was a massive sphere, translucent, suspended by thin lines of energy that hummed. When Sarala approached, she placed her palm on a control node, and the sphere responded, flashing rapid glyphs, adjusting orientation. Then it spoke, or rather something spoke. Access query, genetic match detected. Welcome keyholder. Sarala froze again. Ilias blinked. Okay, that's new authority pending. Name recognized. Sarala, the last listener. Her face went pale. I swear, Ilias said, if this thing starts calling me Chosen One, I'm walking out of here. The sphere pulsed again. Chosen One, identification, Ilias Rain. Probability thread confirmed. Oh, come on, he groaned. Sarala backed away, eyes fixed on him like he'd sprouted tentacles. This cannot be that name. No human has spoken it since the collapse. Yeah, you keep saying that, but I'm still right here. Sorry, just an average guy with a very confused upbringing, and now apparently a cosmic Destiny, stop joking, trust me, I wish I was, especially now that your orb here. Thinks I'm some kind of savior. She turned back to the sphere, explained genetic key trace to Earth. Lineage echo binding initiated memory seed found memory seed. Ilias asked, am I? Am I like a walking USB stick? Sarala muttered something in a language he didn't understand. It sounded like a curse that might wilt plants. Protocol 7b. Name bond complete. Sarala, Ella's continuity resumes. You've bonded us. Sella snapped, okay, can we all agree this got really intimate really fast? The containment field dissolved. Ilias caught himself before falling flat. Sarali's stared at him like he just crawled out of a myth. You spoke the name, you triggered the vault, and now the system thinks we are the continuation of what she looked away, jaw tight, of a promise made before your kind forgot how to keep them. Well, Ilias said, rubbing his wrists, you'll be pleased to know I'm great with promises, especially the ones I never meant to make. He grinned. Despite himself, she didn't smile, but she didn't point a weapon at him again either, which, as far as Ilias was concerned, meant they were making progress. The containment cuffs had vanished, but Sarala's glare was still very much in place, hovering just behind Ilias like a secondary weapon. He had been seated not gently on a metallic bench carved from the same strange alloy that formed the chamber walls. She paced in front of him with the restless energy of someone whose reality had just been thoroughly broken, then reheated, then stepped on. So, Ilias said, crossing one leg over the other, just to recap, you have a top-secret alien vault, a hidden name nobody's supposed to know, and a talking space orb that now thinks I'm part of your space prophecy. Did I miss anything? Sarala stopped. You're irritating, that's the part you're focusing on, really. She pinched the bridge of her nose, then shook her head. You shouldn't have been able to speak my name. The systems here should not have responded. This place, it's not for you. Well, clearly it thinks otherwise, he said, pointing at the now silent sphere, which had retreated into a low, idle hum. Like it was tired of being the center of attention. Also, if it makes you feel better, I don't know how I did it. Could be magic, or maybe I hit my head too hard during atmospheric re-entry. Sella folded her arms. That sphere is a Larry design. It only responds to encoded lineage memory bindings, traces of thought and blood passed down through generations. So I'm a descendant of someone important, is what you're saying. I'm saying you might be carrying the remnants of a promise one made between species, before your kind forgot us. Elias leaned back against the wall. We're great at forgetting things. My uncle once forgot he owned a dog for 2 weeks. The dog incidentally became mayor of a small mining colony. She didn't even blink. Joke, Ilias added. Mostly. Sarala turned away, muttering to herself in her native tongue. Her voice echoed faintly off the chamber walls like the language was reluctant to fade. It had a liquid cadence, rolling and sharp in turns like a song filtered through crystal. Ilias watched her. You know, I'm getting the sense that you don't exactly have a lot of friends. I have no need for them, of course not. Who needs emotional support when you've got a whole haunted base under your command? And glowing alien tech whispering sweet nothings. She shot him a look. All right, I'll stop, he said. Maybe, but can we agree on something? Sala raised a brow. If we're going to be stuck in this weird predestined partnership thing, we should probably work out some ground rules, like, for instance, no surprise force fields. She considered this. Fine, then I request you stop speaking without thinking. Oh, that's going to be harder than you think. He stood up, dusted off his coat, and took a few steps toward the central console. The holographic glyphs shifted subtly when he neared them, not just reacting, but leaning like light drawn to a familiar shape. Do you know what any of this does? He asked. Some of it. This was once a relay station for Ilari memory banks, thought repositories, a place where the important echoes of our kind were stored, like a library, not quite, more like a collective dream. Archive impressions, emotions, decisions, the kind of things your data cores can't replicate. It required a listener to interpret them. Let me guess. Ilias said, you're the listener. She hesitated, then nodded. The last one. Well, that's not ominous at all. She moved past him and activated one of the nodes. A projection appeared in the air, a sphere of fractured images, alien cities beneath dome skis, a council chamber where long-eared beings argued in luminous robes, a starship breaking through atmosphere, its hull glinting like obsidian. Sarala reached into the sphere and pulled one image forward, a gathering of humans and a Lyri shaking hands, or claws in one case, under the symbol of a star bound in roots. The Alliance, she said, before the collapse of what trust memory, everything. Elias Watch the projection fade. You were there, he asked, her face tightened. Number. But my ancestor was the name you spoke. It was a name passed down through her. Line, each listener received it in secret. If you said it, then either you've inherited something from her or this is a manipulation on a scale I can't yet understand. Alias put his hands up. I didn't fake this. I'm not smart enough. My most impressive accomplishment until now was winning a bar fight using only a spoon and a very persuasive insult. The chamber rumbled. Siralis spun toward the console. The vault is opening more pathways. Your presence has destabilized the security layers. Glad to be of help. Elias said, should I be worried? Only if you value your current level of bodily cohesion. Reassuring, she turned to him. We'll need to descend. There's a lower archive. If it's opening, we have to see what it's protecting. They moved through a corridor that hadn't been accessed in centuries. The lights flickered on reluctantly like annoyed ghosts. At one point, a small maintenance drone rolled out from a panel and tried to scan Elia's shoe before promptly short-circuiting and exploding in a puff of acrid smoke. That happened often, he asked. It means the system recognizes you, but it's confused. Great story of my life. They reached the lower chamber. A massive space lined with crystalline sarcophagi. Each held a thought form, an energy echo of someone long dead, preserved not in flesh but in neural residue. 100 silent minds dreaming without bodies. Sarala stepped up to one of the units, placed a hand on the surface. This one, she said quietly, was my mentor. She taught me how to interpret the dream code. Can she talk number? But she might respond. A console, flared symbols appeared, shifting into a language Elias somehow understood. You are not her, but you carry the spark. The continuance has begun. Elias exhaled. Why does everything keep telling me that? Sir turned toward him. Because you said the name. Because somehow, impossibly, the vault thinks you belong. Elias rubbed the back of his neck. Look, if I'm the key to some ancient prophecy, I want it on record that I was not consulted. He glanced around the glowing chamber. And I still want tea. Elias sat on the edge of a crystalline bench that definitely hadn't been designed with human comfort in mind. His legs dangled off the side like a kid stuck in a grown-up's throne, feet barely touching the floor across the chamber. Sarala stood with her hands clasped behind her back, eyes scanning over a rotating projection of glyphs that hovered above the dream sarcophagus. They flickered in pale lavender light, spelling out things that to Elias looked like a particularly creative way to fail a spelling bee. So just to clarify, he said, breaking the silence, these memory echoes can't actually talk, but they can still sass us with vague ancient riddles. Sarah didn't look at him. They respond to resonance to presence. Words are inefficient when dealing with minds that exist in abstraction. Yeah, I know a few people like that, mostly poets. The glyphs pulsed slightly faster, as if acknowledging the joke. He raised an eyebrow. Okay, either that was a coincidence or your ancestor's ghost has a pretty good sense of humor. Sarala didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on one particular pattern, one that appeared as a spiral winding inward, then folding outward again like a blooming machine flower. She reached toward it, fingers brushing the light, and the spiral split open into a new symbol. Ella's watched the shift, fascinated despite himself. I'm guessing that's not a good sign. It's a map, she said, of locations tied to the continuance, all of them locked behind vaults like this one. Let me guess, I have to open those two? Not necessarily, but your presence may activate dormant links. This one only opened because the memory echoes recognized your genetic resonance. Right, so I'm basically the galactic equivalent of a library card, an unstable one. She added, hey, I resent that I'm extremely stable. I floss, I water my plants, I only sometimes steal reactor parts. She turned toward him. You do not understand the weight of what's happening. I'm beginning to, Ilya said, standing, and I hate to admit it, but something about all this feels familiar. Not the visuals, not even the tech, just the sense of it, like I've been down this path before. Sarala studied him in silence for a moment, as if seeing through the surface of him. Her expression softened just slightly before she turned back to the console. The next sequence of symbols appeared, and the entire room began to hum. The sarcophagi lining the walls lit one by one like silent choirs, waking from a long-held breath. The air thickened with something. Not heat, not energy, but memory. Alias felt it prickling at his skin, brushing The back of his mind, I don't like that he muttered it's searching, Sarala said. Testing your capacity for what to carry. The lights flickered again. One of the dream sarcophagi hissed, its seal loosening slightly, not breaking, but cracking like ice beneath a too heavy foot. Ella's took a step back. Is it opening? Number its bleeding, great love, that a pale mist drifted from the seam, coiling along the ground within it. Faint images appeared, flickers of battle and a Lari warrior leaping through plasma fire, a human pilot guiding a failing ship toward a decaying orbit, then a symbol. The spiral again, this time marked with a fracture through its center. Sarala frowned. This one carries trauma, and that's bad because it's reaching out to you. The mist pulled around Ilias, boots swirling in delicate threads. He didn't move, not because he couldn't, but because something in the mist felt fragile, like fear, but not his own. Then the whisper came, not a sound exactly, but a shape of a thought forming in his mind like a half-spoken memory. You are the echo, you are the anchor. Ilias blinked. Did you hear that? Sarala didn't answer immediately. She was watching the mist with cautious reverence. I heard nothing, it said. I'm the anchor. I don't even know what that means. She stepped forward. Then we begin the next phase. We have to leave this vault. The other coordinates are awakening. Ella's exhaled, rubbing his hands together. All right. Adventure great. Is there any chance at all we can stop for snacks along the way? Sella tilted her head, defined. Snack, you know, crispy things, salty things that crunch but don't fight back. There may be nutrient packs in the survival pod. Ah yes, the fine cuisine of dehydrated regret. They made their way back through the winding halls of the vault, the glyphs behind them dimming one by one as if retreating into slumber. As they reached the main chamber again, the sphere that had first spoken to them pulsed gently, awaiting input. Sarala approached it. Access the Lee star map. Prioritize vault locations tied to the continuance. The sphere responded immediately, forming a lattice of points and lines across a projection of the known systems, some of them Ilia's recognized trade hubs, outlaw territories, former war zones. Others blinked in and out like ghosts, places lost to time or buried beneath misinformation. He pointed at one, that one's in the Meridian Drift. I've been there, kind of briefly, after crashing a transport and possibly offending the local fauna. We'll go there first. Seriously, I was hoping you'd say that one was optional. She gave him a look that said everything about how optional it wasn't. They left the vault through a sealed exit that opened at Sorella's command, revealing the windswept cliffs of Histara 9. Once again, Ilias squinted into the twin suns, his boots crunching into the orange sand. Her ship wasn't what he expected. It looked more like a broken blade than a vessel, long and jagged with a hull that shimmered unpredictably, almost like it was deciding whether or not it wanted to be seen. He blinked. That thing flies. She ignored him and walked up the ramp, motioning for him to follow. Inside, it was no less confusing. The walls were semi-organic, humming faintly. The control panels didn't have buttons so much as smooth nodes that responded to touch, and from what Ilias could tell, mood. He poked one. It glowed briefly, then showed him an image of a planet being consumed by vines. He backed away. Okay, touch nothing. Got it. Sarala sat at the helm, sliding her fingers along the interface in a motion that looked more like a dance than navigation. The ship lifted silently, no rumble, no fire, just a flick, and they were airborne, breaking through atmosphere like a thought slipping into a dream. Ilias settled into a seat that molded itself to his shape a bit too enthusiastically. You know, he said, for something ancient, you fly pretty smooth. She likes you. I'm not sure how I feel about being liked by something that might be half alive. You'll adjust. He looked out the viewport as Hisara 9 shrank below them. So what exactly happens if we find these other vaults? We uncover what was lost, and if what was lost doesn't want to be found. Sarala glanced at him, just a flicker of her golden eyes. Then we wake it anyway. Elias sighed, leaned back, and closed his eyes for a moment. Do me a favor, he said. If any more memory ghosts try to speak in my head, tell them to be polite about it. Maybe say hello first. I'll pass along your request. Thanks. I'd hate to be rude to ancient interstellar trauma. He smiled faintly to himself, then let the hum of the ship's engines or heart maybe carry him forward into whatever came next. The ship was sulking, at least that was Ilias' best guess, based on the way the lighting dimmed every time he entered the control deck, and the subtle shudder that went through the floor panels whenever he tried to hum a tune. Sarala said the ship was semi-sentient bound to her bloodline and possessed a sense of dignity. Elias for his part had accidentally referred to it as shiny death lizard within audible range, and the ship hadn't quite forgiven him. He sipped something that claimed to be tea, but tasted like mint had lost a fight with an electric current. Just so we're clear, he said, lounging backwards in his seat, the ship actually is mad at me, right? Sarah didn't look up from the console. She finds your aura disorganized. Disorganized? My aura has layers. Complexity, depth. It's like a bowl of spoiled fruit. No one wants to look at it. But they can't stop wondering what went wrong. He narrowed his eyes. That's unnecessarily vivid. She gestured toward a swirling display of system maps. We're nearing the drift. Prepare yourself for what disappointment. I'm always ready for that. The meridian drift is spatially unstable. Gravity behaves irrationally here. You'll feel it first in your stomach, then your teeth. Great, I love when my teeth go rogue. Outside space began to change, not just visually though. Stars blurred and twisted like paint dropped into water, but conceptually. Elias had never been good at abstract physics, but he was pretty sure the distance between 2 points was not supposed to oscillate like a heartbeat. The ship bucked once the internal lights dimmed, then shifted into a faint green hue that Elias decided he would call ominous celery. His stomach gave a little flip like it was trying to jump ship. Without him, okay, he muttered, not a fan of the drift. Focus your mind. Sala said calmly, that's the thing I never really figured out how to do, that my mind is more of a casual lounge than a workplace. The ship tilted sideways, or possibly reality did, hard to tell. They slid out of distortion with a violent lurch, and a shape filled the forward viewport, massive, angular, and half buried in the carcass of a dead moon. Elias squinted. The structure was clearly Ellery. Even broken and half fused with regolith, it radiated that same ancient authority. Elegant, sharp, and a little smug about it. That's it, he asked. The next vault? It's not a vault, Sarala said. It's a node. Forgive me if that distinction doesn't immediately make me feel better. The ship descended, carefully sliding between jagged outcroppings and drifting debris. The moon's surface was cracked and pitted, its gravity weak enough that dust lingered in the air like indecisive ghosts. They landed near a collapsed ridge, just beside a yawning fissure that pulsed faintly with residual energy. Elia stepped onto the surface with a little hop, floating awkwardly before the magnetic grips in his boots kicked in. I feel like an undercooked pancake. Sarah adjusted something on her wrist and strode ahead. Stay close. The node may not respond without both of us. Define respond, because last time I inhaled the dreams of a dead philosopher. They reached the fissure's edge below. Etched into the rock like a secret trying to forget itself was the symbol. Again the spiral, this time intersected by a ring of 6 stars. As Elias stared at it, the edges seemed to flicker in his vision, not moving, but not quite still either. He knelt beside it. This feels familiar again, which is getting old, by the way. Sarala pressed her palm to the spiral. Nothing happened. She looked at him. It's waiting. Oh, come on, what do I even do? Say a magic word. Tap dance. Just touch it, let it read you. Elias sighed dramatically, then placed his hand against the stone. The shift was instant. The air disappeared, or maybe he did. Sound turned inside out, and then he was standing, not physically, but in the way dreams feel real, inside a vast white chamber. Stars pulsed outside walls that weren't walls, and in front of him stood a figure. It was human, or had been once. Tall, armored face obscured by a cascade of holographic ribbons that hummed with data. It raised a hand. You return at last. Elias blinked. We've met. You were once the seed, now you are the anchor. You hold what remains. I'm really going to need subtitles for all of this. The continuance requires a vessel. You were chosen before your birth. Shaped echoed forward. Okay, Elias said, trying not to panic. That sounds cool and all, but I'm just a guy who flew a little too close to a space rift and maybe insulted a smug orb. I'm not. You are what remains. You are what will return. The figure stepped forward, and with one smooth motion pressed its fingers to his forehead. Light exploded inward. He was in space. He was falling. He was remembering a battle won. He hadn't lived a packed one. He hadn't made. He saw an Alari listener and a human diplomat clasp hands in a room of light, speak names that bound thought to thought. He felt a promise, a dying hope cast into genetic memory, and he saw the last act of the listener. A name whispered into a void. His name spoken into the future. He stumbled Backward back into his body into the fissure, the cold Sarala caught him you. Saw something she said yeah he gasped you could say that he looked down at the spiral it had changed its center now glowed with a golden pulse beating in. Time with his own heart the vaults aren't just storage he said they are. Pieces of a person of a memory and I'm carrying it she looked at him eyes. Unreadable then we must find the next before others do others she didn't. Answer back aboard the ship as they broke orbit, Elias stared at his reflection in the dark glass of the viewport. Do I look different he asked. You look the same Sarala said liar, she. Considered your aura is slightly less offensive. I'll take that as a compliment you shouldn't, he grinned. But I will, and somewhere in the ship's belly a pulse of golden light echoed through its circuits soft distant. And unmistakably, knew Elias was reasonably sure the ship was trying to kill him or prank him possibly both it. Had dropped the artificial gravity to half strength without warning that morning, sending him tumbling into the ceiling with the grace of a confused manatee. His attempt to correct the issue had resulted in him being trapped upside down in a narrow corridor for 12 minutes while the ship's ventilation system panted rhythmically like it was laughing. You're enjoying this, aren't you? He muttered, dangling by one boot from a magnetic seam. She only responds to respect, Sorella called from the adjacent chamber, and possibly good hygiene. I showered yesterday, then I meant spiritual hygiene with great effort, and a yelp that he insisted was masculine. Elias righted himself and floated down into the gravity stabilizer. Ring the ship's core glowed faintly, still touched with that golden pulse. From the node it had stopped flickering now. It breathed soft and regular as though it had found a rhythm it liked. He exhaled. It's like the ship has a heartbeat. It does, Sala said, appearing beside him with the kind of silent movement that always made Elias jump, but it was never sync to yours before cool. That's only mildly terrifying. She handed him a data slate. The contents scrolled too quickly for him to parse, but he caught glimpses of coordinates and dates that didn't exist yet. What's this? The next key. The vaults resonate with each other now that one is active, another calls, but it's strange the signal isn't in a Lari code. It's human, ancient human. Wait, what? Like Earth, ancient Rome, and sandals early proto-solar diaspora around the time your people first left their cradle. Okay, well, that's not suspicious at all. A secretary memory palace broadcasting in extinct human code. Sure, why not? I missed when my biggest problem was whether my protein packs were expired. The coordinates led them to a derelict outpost orbiting a gas giant that flickered like a malfunctioning god. The station had no name, just a serial designation and a distress signal that looped endlessly, transmitting a single phrase in a forgotten dialect. Remember what was taken? Creepy, Elias said as they docked. We're not going to get eaten by space ghosts, are we? If we do, Sarala replied, strapping on her shoulder scanner. I'll leave a tasteful eulogy. They entered through an airlock that wheezed open with the mournful tone of a machine resigned to its fate. The corridor beyond was filled with frost. And Echo's lights flickered, but didn't fail. Panels had been removed in patches, exposing veins of conduit that pulsed like nerves. It didn't feel abandoned, it felt waiting. Illas tried to whistle, but the sound died in the heavy air. So vault below us, 4 decks down beneath the archive core. I'm assuming elevators are off the menu. Correct, of course. They descended through maintenance shafts. Elias insisted on going first once, then spent the next 30 grumbling about handhold that felt judgmental. At one point, he thought he saw a shape in the shadows, tall, human-shaped, unmoving, but when he turned his light it was only a broken repair drone long fused into the wall. The vault room was circular and oddly warm, a dome-shaped chamber with no obvious machinery, only a floating sphere of crystal suspended in a network of filaments that resembled spider silk. Spun by an engineer on a deadline. As soon as Elias entered, the crystal pulsed, and for the briefest instant showed his own face reflected on its surface. Then it flickered and showed Sarala's. She inhaled sharply. It recognizes both of us. Cool, very cool. Please define. Recognize the architecture is hybrid, she murmured, walking around the sphere. Human alloy Alari signal harmonics. This wasn't just a meeting of cultures, this was a fusion. You're saying we were working together back, then I'm saying we were one thing, one purpose long before records began. He reached toward the sphere. It didn't resist, it didn't burn. It just opened, not physically, no seams, no hinges, but conceptually he fell into it without falling, like thought given gravity. Again the blinding chamber of memory, again the presence, this time less distant, more curious, watching him. But this time there was another voice he does not remember, said, a second figure, blurred and golden, yet he dreams it. Still he is the carrier, said the first. He holds what was sealed, he speaks the name. They turned to Elias, and this time he didn't panic. Why me, he asked. Why do I know her name? Because you gave it to her. Images flooded in a garden on a dead world. A human man in an Alari woman, young, bright-eyed, conspiratorial, talking in hushed tones, her name spoken for the first time, not as a title or a function, but as a gift. You called her, not as a listener, not as a soldier, as herself. The connection snapped. He staggered backward into the vault chamber, gasping. Sarala caught him again. What did you see? You, but not you before. You were laughing. That doesn't sound like me. I think we were friends or more, and I think we made a promise, something big, something impossible. The crystal began to dissolve. Threads of light wove into the air, forming a sigil that hovered for a moment, then sank into Elias' chest like a memory. Returning home, Sarala stared at him. You're becoming the key. I don't want to be a key. Keys get turned and stuck, and sometimes lost behind couches. It's not optional anymore, he groaned. I knew you were going to say that. Back on the ship, the core pulsed again, brighter than before. Elias lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. Sarala appeared in the doorway, a rare softness in her tone. Sleep, Elias. Will need your strength soon. Great, because when I dream now, it's basically a history lesson narrated by space philosophers. She turned to go. Sala, he called. She paused. That name, the one I called you, the real one. Do you remember it? Her long ears twitched once. Not yet. Then she was gone, and Elias, for the first time since all this began, wasn't afraid of sleep. The station drifted like a forgotten thought, barely tethered to the orbit of a burnout star. Its surfaces were covered in hexagonal plating that shifted patterns when touched, a defense mechanism, or perhaps a nervous habit left behind by its builders. Elias didn't trust it, he said so out loud. The station ignored him, which only confirmed his suspicions. I'm just saying, he told Sarala as they docked. Any place that rearranges itself when you look at it funny is probably planning something. It's not sentient, she replied, scanning the fluctuating readings on her gauntlet. It's coded to respond to cognitive input. Same thing, I respond to cognitive input. And look how I turned out. She didn't dignify that with a response. Instead, she keyed open the airlock with a gesture, and the seal hissed like a disappointed librarian. The corridor beyond was dark, but not empty. Something shimmered just at the edges of vision, ghosts of data, flickers of half-formed architecture responding to their presence. This place is reacting, Elias whispered. It's resonance archive, Sorella said, a place where memory was recorded as state, not storage. It doesn't hold information. It becomes it. He looked around with exaggerated caution. So we're inside someone's diary. More like their nervous system. That's worse. That's so much worse. The corridor changed shape as they walked, not dramatically, no melting floors or twisting walls, but enough that Elias noticed door frames were slightly narrower than before and light subtly colder. It felt like walking into a room where the air was aware of your footfalls when they passed through a threshold of etched silver. A low hum began to echo through the floor, faint but steady heartbeat. He asked, closer to a synchronization pulse. Sala murmured, her eyes distant. It's tuning itself to us. I didn't ask to be tuned. My last attempt at harmony was abandoned. College and we broke up over a disagreement about the definition of funk. The chamber they entered was vast, spherical, and hollow. Lights floated in the air like fireflies blinking in rhythm. At the center hovered a lattice of golden filaments wrapped around a crystal core, similar to the vaults, but this one was different. It looked fractured. Sarala approached it slowly, reverently. It's damaged. Elias looked around. Is this where the next piece is? It was. What do you mean? Was she touched one of the filaments, and it recoiled, sparking faintly. Someone's been here recently. The vault's been accessed, and something was taken. He felt it before he understood it. A hollow ache in the chest, like a thought cut off mid-idea. Can they do that? Not easily, not without something or someone attuned. His stomach turned. You think someone else like me is out there? Number, not like you, not human. She moved around the vault's remains, fingers trailing through the air, but aligned, forced into harmony, twisted into it. That doesn't sound good. It isn't. He stepped closer, reached toward the crystal. It pulsed once, and he felt the now familiar tug of memory, but this time it didn't pull him in. It asked like a door knocking politely. He nodded. Okay, let's see. The room disappeared. He stood in a city of light and wind, Alari in design, but blurred by motion, as though time didn't quite settle here. Around him, voices whispered, Alari and human, arguing, laughing, dreaming. He turned and saw himself, or someone who might have been him, walking beside a woman with long ears and sharp eyes. They were building something, not with tools, but with ideas. The memory was hot with purpose, humming with belief. They weren't preserving history, they were encoding hope. and at the center of it all was a single promise made without words: we will not forget. Even when we are forgotten, Elias felt the fracture, a dark shard driven into the memory's core, foreign, cold, wrong. It twisted the light, turned belief into control. A shape loomed unseen, but felt watching, waiting. Then the vision cracked. He stumbled back into his body. With a shout, the vault was glowing, threads unraveling, leaking memory into the air like smoke. They corrupted it, he said. They're not just taking these, they're changing them. Sarala was silent. Then it wasn't just Illyri who feared forgetting. There were others, the separatists, the erasers. They believed memory was a chain that we had to sever, the past to be free. Charming bunch. They tried to destroy the vaults. Once we thought they failed, but maybe they just waited, and now they're ahead of us. Elias looked around. What do? We find the next one before they do, and we recover what was lost back on the ship. He paced the control deck, arms folded. This is starting to feel big, like save the galaxy big. It was always that, Sarala said, adjusting the new trajectory. You're just beginning to understand it, he sighed, then looked at her. So this name thing, still nothing. She hesitated, a flicker, a sound, almost. He nodded. Well, let me know if I can help. Maybe I'll just try random syllables at you. She raised an eyebrow. Do that, and I'll introduce you to vacuum without a suit. See, that's the kind of emotional closeness I live for. The ship jumped to light speed. Elias watched the stars stretch into lines and let out a long, slow breath. Okay, he muttered, let's keep running toward the past, then maybe it's tired of chasing us. Elias' nose itched the moment the new coordinates loaded, which he chose to interpret as a bad omen, not the galaxy-ending kind of bad omen, but the kind that suggested his next few days would include mild peril, confusing architecture, and possibly a surprising number of stairs. Sala, of course, took no notice of this. She was already busy plotting their approach into a system marked only as N9B2, a dead zone between map trade lanes, where solar activity flickered like the nervous blink of an ancient engine. This place has no recorded stations, no beacons, and no tourism reviews, Ilya said, squinting at the screen. It's basically the interstellar version of a dirt road that leads to someone's suspicious cabin. It also has no record of interference, which makes it the safest place to hide something valuable. Sure, if by safe you mean impossibly ominous. I can already hear the music sting. The ship dropped out of jump, and Ilya's stomach attempted a brief escape from his body. A head framed against the turbulent backdrop of a dying red dwarf was an artificial construct, unlike anything they'd seen before. A lattice of interlocking rings drifted geometrical harmony, each one spinning at a slightly different speed, forming a hollow sphere the size of a small moon. From the center of the construct shone a point of brilliant blue light that pulsed irregularly like a heartbeat, struggling to find its rhythm. That, Elias whispered, does not look user-friendly. It's not meant to be. That's a lock frame, which is a vault that doesn't guard memory, it guards access to memory. He blinked. That's philosophical. It's also deadly. The only people who made these were the Priori Sentinels. They didn't believe in doors, they believed in mazes that punished doubt. Elias sighed. I hate mazes. He hated them more when they were made of shifting energy fields and required answering logic puzzles midair while hovering over gravity wells. The lock frame didn't simply allow entry, it demanded proof. Each ring tested them, one with sound, another with light, a third with gravitational inversion. That turned Sarah's hair into an impromptu flag. Ella's failed several trials before figuring out the pattern wasn't intellectual, it was emotional. They're reacting to what I feel, he said, wittied as the fourth ring shimmered open after he remembered his dog from childhood. I got through by missing Barkley. Your people encoded memory through sentiment. Sala murmured. They left traces of themselves in everything. The vaults weren't just built, they were felt into being. Well, I feel like I need a nap, and some toast does that get me past the fifth ring. The last gate didn't test anything, it simply opened as they approached, revealing a chamber that felt strangely silent. Though the ship's instruments insisted it was filled with harmonic sound waves. In the center floated a cube of light. Small, no larger than a shoebox, but it emanated presence. Sarala stepped forward, halted, then turned to Elias. It's for you. Of course it is. He touched it. It didn't pull him in, it didn't blind him. It listened. It unfolded without sound, revealing a memory that wasn't a vision, but a presence thick and layered like honey made of light. He wasn't in a place. He was in someone, seeing through their eyes, feeling their thoughts. He stood on a ridge above a vast ocean made of mist. Beside the woman who bore Sarala's face, but younger, lighter, Funa, they were discussing something important, something dangerous, as couldn't hear the words, but He felt the emotion, fear, hope, commitment. They weren't lovers, they were partners. Builders, they had made the vaults together using human imagination and a Lari order to construct something new. Species could alone, then he spoke her name, he heard it now. Softabic, not of Earth, but not alien, it resonated with identity, not assigned, not inherited, but chosen. It was a name she gave to no one except him, the memory. Snapped back in the lock frame, Illa's staggered, breathing hard. Sarala caught him again, a habit forming quickly. I know your name. She didn't speak, she watched him with eyes that had held 1,000 years, and for once looked uncertain. You gave it to me, he said quietly. When we made the first vault, you told me no one else would ever know it, not unless they were part of it. The light cube dimmed. Behind them, the lock frame began to shake subtly at first, then violently. Elias said, is it supposed to do that? No, Sorella said, someone else just tried to force access. We're being traced. Fantastic, well, we've overstayed our metaphysical welcome. They fled the lock frame as shock waves burst through the rings. Their ship rattled like a tin can full of over-enthusiastic squirrels. As it broke away into sublight behind them, the construct collapsed inward with a sound that wasn't sound at all, but the tearing of unshared memory. Later, drifting safely through a quiet vector of dark space, Elias sat in the dim control room sipping synthetic coffee and thinking too hard. Sella joined him, saying nothing for a long while. Finally, you really remember it? Yes, say it. He looked at her. Not until you want me to. She nodded, then unexpectedly, thank you. For what? For not ruining it with a joke. I was this close, he said, holding up two fingers. You should have seen the punchline I had ready. Don't tempt me to revoke your air privileges. They sat in companionable silence as the stars crawled past, and for the first time Ella's felt something less like a passenger in this story and more like its co-author. Whatever was coming next, it would not be just about the past, it would be about the choice to remember, and the cost of forgetting. The final vault was not hidden in the outer rim of some forgotten system, nor buried beneath the crust of a rogue moon. It was floating plainly, absurdly, in the middle of nowhere, between constellations beyond map space, in a stretch of vacuum so undisturbed the sensors blinked twice before believing it, just there waiting like it had always known they'd come. Elias found this deeply unfair. See, he said, tapping the screen as if scolding. This is suspicious. Vault shouldn't have curb appeal. It's a decoy, Sala said. Arms crossed, but not in the way you think. Oh good, Elias muttered, a deceptive deception. It's not meant to fool enemies, it's meant to test allies if you find it. You're meant to, which sounds less like a test and more like a riddle written by a moody librarian. It was my idea, she said. Coolly tapping in coordinates for approach, he opened his mouth, closed it, then said, of course it was, and let me guess, it unlocks emotionally and also might explode. Number this one unlocks with choice. That shut him up briefly. The ship coasted closer and the vault became clear, a perfect orb, pearl-like, with no seams, no entry points, and no visible defenses. It radiated calm, which Elias didn't trust at all. So what's the catch? You choose to remember, Sarala said, or you don't. He blinked. That's it. Memory was always the power, not weapons, not technology, just memory, shared. Protected or buried, this vault contains everything we were, everything we tried to be. If we open it, we carry that burden. If we don't, it stays buried, forgotten. Safe, no pressure. She didn't smile, but her expression softened. This is why we built them, not to lock away secrets, but to give us the right to decide what to do with them. Elias stared at the orbit, hovered like a waiting breath, so all the running, the glowing puzzles, the psychic mazes, and the bits where I almost died in 14 unnecessarily creative ways, all that leads to a button labeled yes or no. He stepped forward before she could respond, put his hand on the orb. It pulsed, not dramatically like it was saying, I'm listening. I choose yes, he said. The vault didn't explode. Instead, it bloomed, petals of light unfolding into silence. Images drifted outward like pollen, a lyre and human together, building, failing, forgiving, visions from a time before the great silence, the wars, the forgetting. There were names, so many names, and not just Sarala's, names of architects, rebels, teachers, poets, scientists who tried to bridge stars, not with ships but with empathy. They had failed, yes, but they had tried. He grinned. You really do like me, she raised an eyebrow. Don't ruin the moment. Back on the ship, as they set course for known space, the system where it had all begun lit up on the star map. Elias Stared at it for a moment. I was an engineer, he said suddenly back then in. That other life, not a warrior, not a prophet, just a guy who liked building. Things. Sella nodded. You still are, that's why you were chosen, you build bridges, he snorted, and fall off them frequently comes with the roll, the ship hummed. Under them as it surged into fold, space stars blurred, then vanished. Elias leaned back, exhaling slowly. The universe hadn't been saved in the flashy way with explosions and dramatic speeches, but in the quiet choice to remember what mattered. Do you want to hear it? He asked. She turned to him. My name. I still remember it, she thought for a long moment, then say it. He did, and this time she didn't freeze, didn't recoil. Her eyes closed, and when she opened them there was peace there, sadness too, but no fear. Thank you, she said. Elias nodded. You're welcome, Sala. She smiled. Number. My name is Alenra. He blinked. Really, that's beautiful. But also I was way off when I guessed it was something like Glorax. You deserve punishment for that guess alone, please. I once named my toaster Kevin. My instincts are impeccable. As they flew toward the edge of known space, carrying with them the last light of forgotten truths, the two of them, builder and guardian, past and present, shared a silence not of loss, but of completion, and for the first time in centuries, Alenra spoke her name freely, and Elias, who had once been no one in particular, carried it with the care of someone who understood exactly how heavy memory could